most attractive part about Islam when I began to learn about it was learning how that it's more focused towards the truth of what God wants than
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
So my name is Christopher Hulse. I come from a traditionally Christian family, born and raised that way, until my family split when I was in my early teens. I met my wife in 2007, and got married in 2008 after we made the decision that I would like to convert to Islam and revert to Islam, as they say, and I traveled to Indonesia to convert. I was raised in a classic traditional Christian family originally, back in Lower Hutt, and then after my family fell apart, I kind of stopped going to church as often, and then in my late teens I was not attending church at all. But after meeting my wife, I decided that I should reconnect to God, and I decided at that point that I'm going to actually convert and revert back to Islam. Before I reverted to Islam, I had quite a few thoughts on Islam that were not really quite correct. I didn't think all of them were terrorists, and I didn't think that all of them were bad people, of course. I was very confused about why the Sunnis and Shiites were fighting in different countries. I did also have the misconception that women in Islam were repressed. But once I started to learn about Islam, all those notions went out the window completely, because that is not the truth at all. I came to know about Islam through my wife's family. At first they introduced me to the pillars of Islam, and how that Christianity is quite similar to Islam, and that to revert back to Islam is following the actual truth on what we should be following as society. And yeah, the most attractive part about Islam when I began to learn about it was learning how that it's more focused towards the truth of what God wants than what you're taught in other more, how would you put that? Yeah, and also the fact that if you look at history, that like Christianity was very much morphed from what was originally taught. So yeah, that's very disillusioning when you actually learn that, and then you learn Islam as, oh right, what I should be doing. Islam teaches you to be closer to your family, bring brotherhood to your fellow man around you, knowing that you are one connected group, following the traditional history and following how we're supposed to be taught, whereas other religions sometimes have morphed away from what they're traditionally supposed to be taught and the ways they were taught originally, where Islam has been followed through history, being taught the same way from the very beginning. The amount of time that it took me to decide that I want to revert to Islam was only a couple of months after I started learning the true values of what is like to be within a group that actually really cares about each other and is taught the right way on how you should follow the in this case, the pillars of Islam, that you should make sure that you are following the right way to get to Jannah. My friends and family were a bit hesitant and concerned when I said that I was going to convert and revert back to Islam. My father was not very happy with it, but after my return in 2018 back to New Zealand after living in Indonesia for 9 years, he was actually more welcoming and actually has now invited my family, my Muslim family that is, that I currently now live with, into his house several times when we've gone up to visit him. Whereas my friends that I've talked to about this, they haven't actually voiced any concerns at all, and they're just interested in what I've learnt, and that I've actually become a Muslim. That, hey, I didn't know that. It was most of their replies being as, I don't look any different, do I? Islam has changed my everyday life by making me more aware of the goings on around the world, and that I didn't expect. I'm more focused on what I'm doing personally within my own life and looking out around the world on what is actually going on, and having more of an opinion myself, and that opinion is more orientated towards the Islam's views, towards humanity in a whole, being maybe a little more sleepy in the morning, being as waking up for subuh every morning to go salat, but that's what you have to do if you want to get into Jannah. What Islam can offer to the average person is learning to look at yourself, learning to build your own, what they call iman, and or in Maori, mana, or look at your peaceful self, and building up that strength that you are actually able to then look at yourself and look at others in the same way, and actually want to take care of your fellow man, so that you don't actually end up having any bad feelings or have more emotional connection to your fellow person, so that they themselves actually feel valued, and then they will in turn feel that you are a person that has great iman or mana, and that you are able to actually help them in their everyday lives, so that they themselves feel valued, and that they may themselves turn and then feel the same way to others, and then would actually grow as a society that not only looks for yourself, but you look out for all of humanity. As a Kiwi Muslim, I found after I got back from Indonesia and being away for after 9 years in 2018, that a lot of people didn't know much about Islam, and they were sometimes curious, and sometimes they were a bit like, okay, that's weird, why are you in Islam? You're a white guy. But ever since the March 15th attack, more people have actually been more open to ask more questions, and not shied away from actually asking me difficult things. And I've been more than happy to answer those questions, and they've been very, very understanding about what I've actually told them. None of them have actually argued with me so far. And Alhamdulillah, I hope that someday some of them will actually join us. So when I moved to Indonesia in 2009, I found it interesting that the culture was so mixed between Christians, some Buddhists, and Muslims. But the thing is that they all seem to get along pretty well with each other, as long as everybody stayed not arguing about things, that everyone actually got along with each other. They understood that if you need to go to the mosque for your Friday prayer, they're like, okay, you take the time, you go. But on the other side of that, there was some people that were like, hey, but you're a white guy. I didn't even know you're Muslim. And they seemed to be more a bit obtuse to it, being as that they were like, okay, that's kind of weird, being as most of the white people here, we don't know what their religion is, but you're openly a Muslim. I was like, yeah, I am. What's the difference between the other Muslims here? And they were like, oh. And at that point, they didn't really have an opinion about it. So after a while, I kind of really forgot that I was actually a foreigner around my colleagues and other people there. It wasn't until I really looked in a mirror in a photograph that I was like, hey, I stand out quite a bit. So for those people that are actually searching for the truth and searching for knowledge, what I say is forget those conspiracy theories. Come to a local mosque, ask questions, learn about Islam. Get rid of your misconceptions. You need to wake up to something that's real. What I could say to other Muslims and non-Muslims is that open up to each other. Talk about what you want to know and actually answer truthfully to each other. You should always get to know your fellow man and woman. That opinions are only changed when you talk. Stereotypes and misconceptions can be easily erased by talking to one another and actually learning from each other. Hatred to each other is just misconceptions that have been pushed far too long.